We'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Dallas Ellsworth. I am the director of the marketing department here at Fort Defiance Indian Hospital Board. And today we have our last presentation of our web series around sexual assault and child sexual abuse for the month of April. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And so we have Lynette and Stephanie from the Family Advocacy Center here at Fac Medical Center. They presented Wednesday on what the Family Advocacy Center does. That's currently on our Facebook page. So if you missed out on that, just feel free to scroll through our Facebook. If you don't have Facebook, we'll be uploading that recording to our YouTube, and that should be available either later today or next week. And we'll be putting out an announcement for that as well. But today we're going to go ahead and wrap up this series and wrap up Sexual Assault Awareness Month with a webinar on healing from sexual assault and child sexual abuse, advocacy, support, and resources. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Lynette and Stephanie, and go ahead and introduce yourselves. And when you're ready, I'll go ahead and start the slides.
Okay, thank you, Dallas. Good morning, everyone. زلنا أودثي دنا هشكا هزوان نشلة دو تو خنا باششين أرو تنزني يدش شيء دو تو هدليني يدش نلا شأتشنا إياه كيا أني يدشين أرو شأوى إياه كبها يدشين توده نشا أكون عودنا سنة نشلة. My name is Lynette Gilmore. I'm a family advocate with the Family Advocacy Center here at the Fort Defiance Hospital. I've been with the Fac Medical Center for 12 years. 7 of those years was at the Adolescent Care Unit, which is an inpatient adolescent treatment facility. And also I've been here at the Family Advocacy Center for going on 5 years. And my educational background consists of education, human services, and psychology. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Yate Shay, Stephanie Perkins, Yenshia, Twitch, Eaton, and Schlin, Sethna Bithni, Bashichin, Ashihin, Dashiche, the Bethel, Nakaibato, A. Danasha. So, hello, my name is Stephanie. I currently reside here in Fort Defiance, Arizona, but I'm originally from Mexican Springs, New Mexico. I am a mother of 3. And I have 2 grandchildren. I have a Tsui Yeja and Nali Tate. And I have been here at TMC for about 13 years, working with FAC for about 3 to 4 years going on. I have a BA in psychology and A in psychology. I enjoy working with my people here. In the community that I was brought up in. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today.
Awesome, great. Just a really quick note to our viewers, if you have any questions, if you're on Zoom, feel free to put it in the question box. And if you're joining us on Facebook, feel free to drop it in the comments. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go ahead and do a Q&A. So I'll go ahead and bring up the first slide. And you guys go ahead and take it from here.
Thank you, Dallas. So from our last presentation, we talked about the Family Advocacy Center, what we do, and how we work with our patients. So in that presentation, we discussed our process as far as the medical process for child sexual abuse and sexual assault. And if you tuned into Dr. Analys's presentation yesterday, you heard from her specifically about sexual assault and child sexual abuse. So this morning, we're leaving off from our presentation from the other day. And at this point, we've gone through the exam, we've gone through the initial emergency appointment or the emergency visit that occurred here in our department. So at this point, Steph and I are doing the bulk of our advocacy, and this is where healing is initiated, and this is where healing begins and how we work with our patients. So just to let you know that some of the material is sensitive, and if you feel triggered in any way, feel free to take a break and join us if you can. Self-care is what we practice, and we want you to practice that also. Next slide, Dallas. Okay, so we wanted to start off with the definition of advocacy, and that's the act or process of supporting a cause, or the act or process of advocating. In this case, we're supporting our victims and survivors of child sexual abuse and sexual assault. The Family Advocacy Center uses a trauma-informed approach at all times. We are big on this because we know that our patients are coming from a traumatic incident, and maybe they've tried to do some healing on their own if it was a delayed disclosure, but if it's an emergency case, then they're fresh from their trauma. There's a lot of shock, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of emotions when they get to us. So we are very keen on practicing a trauma-informed approach from here on, because from the point they leave us, there's other processes that they have to be involved in, and we want them to always be able to come back to us and talk to us and know that we understand and we care and we're here to support them. A trauma-informed system uses the principles of safety, trust, cultural relevance, choice, collaboration, and empowerment. We really like this quote, and it's from the Sexual Assault Demonstration Initiative, and this describes everything that we do here at the Family Advocacy Center. So we'll start going into our services for advocacy and healing. The Family Advocacy Support Services. Our first point of contact with our patients is following a traumatic incident. Therefore, it is imperative that the assigned advocate, Steph or I, provide support, attention, empathy, patience, anticipatory guidance, and resources through the multiple processes that the patient and families may encounter. So the FAC medical process, during this time, Steph or I will quietly be present during Dr. Analysis, medical history, and evaluation, and when she needs us during the exam. So our role in this case is to take notes, is to look for feedback, and during this time, Dr. Analysis will mention anything that we need to follow up on or anything we need to note in particular, so that when we're done with the medical process, we know exactly how to tailor our care for the patients. Healing is encouraged and at the pace and willingness of the patient. From the moment the incident occurs, the person is a survivor and not a victim. So we always put the healing options out there. We put the therapy options out there for our patients, and they decide what they want to do, and we will respect their wishes. Although we do encourage healing and therapy. So we just want everyone to know that our patients are survivors. Next slide.
So I'm going to continue to talk about support services. The legal process with law enforcement, investigative, and court processes. So we want to let our patients know that it's a lengthy process. We want to let them know what to expect. We want to give them realistic expectations. And we really want them to focus on healing from whatever they had gone through, the traumatic event in their life, and not the investigation. It's very difficult for them not to think about the investigative part of it. But, you know, it's really important for them to begin healing, and we'll talk more about that in the slides that we're presenting. So that expectation, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. And, you know, we do get parents in here that want answers and they want things done right away. And we have to let them know that it's not going to happen that way, you know, and we have really no control over that part of it. We are only the medical component of this whole process. So we have to give them a heads up and let them know that this is, you know, what they can expect. Communication from the point of intake. The assigned advocate remains in contact with the patient, families, and definitely to discuss components of healing. So when Lynn and I, the patients come in and they come in for a follow-up, Lynn and I will stay in contact with our patients. We will continue to get updates for them, how they're feeling, things that they're looking for, like, their bodies and how it's changing, and, the medical and physical part of that healing process and trying to move forward. And it's not easy. Case review, we have weekly occurrences as a team to discuss intake, needs assessment, referral, updates, and plan of care. So Lynn, Dr. Nallis, and when we get a nurse, she will be part of that discussion. And we usually go over our patients on a weekly basis. If they're coming in, if Lynn and I have updates on things that they want to discuss with Dr. Nallis, she has, we give her that information, and so she's able to identify their needs. And so, and that is very helpful as a team for FAC. Therapeutic options, traditional services, clinical therapy, long-term treatment, faith-based religions, support groups, self-care. Those are very important. We often encourage our patient to seek therapy, however they want to go with that route. We do have an intake process here with the TMC mental health outpatient, which is very supportive, and we are thankful for their services. So we kind of have a way to present our patients and their case and their needs to them, and then from there they can call and schedule. So we have those services and that collaboration with TMC outpatient mental health. And with traditional services, we also have the TMC traditional practitioners here, and we often work with Aaron Sam, and we are able to send referrals to him also. And from there, he will set up services either in the Hogan or telehealth if that's needed. Transportation, frequently our patients need transportation to and from appointments. Arrangements are made with specific TMC, PRC staff or advocates from other agencies. So we work specifically with two individuals, with the TMC, PRC staff. They are wonderful. We give them a call, send them an email. We let them know that, hey, one of our patients doesn't have transportation. Can you set that up for us? And they are able to do that within a day's notice. And then from there, the transportation company or the driver will contact our patient and they'll confirm for pickup. So we are most definitely thankful for their services and their flexibility. Advocates from other agencies, sometimes depending if FBI is taking the case, Yvonne Salazar, one of the victim specialists, will transport the patient to and from their appointments here. So that is very helpful also. The Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus friendly, our environment is created to allow our patients to be themselves. Comfort is a priority. We honor how our patients identify themselves, and we use their respected pronouns. Not many people, and I think it's becoming more relevant now that people are starting to identify themselves in a way to where not most of their families are supportive. So we want to make sure that when they do come here, they're supported, they're respected. When we complete the intake or we're getting an intake from the patient, we often ask them, how do you identify yourself? They're able to let us know how they would like to be, their pronouns. And so that is what we want to make our patients feel comfortable with, and who they are, and how they identify themselves. Next slide.
Thank you, Steph. So this next slide is going to be a lot of information, but we cover all of this material when we meet with our sexual assault patients and their families, their guardians. So I wanted to make sure that you all are aware of these things when it comes to child sexual abuse. This is anticipatory guidance that Dr. Ornelas provides to the parents and guardians, and what we also discuss with our patients when we work with them from the beginning. So these are very, very important key. This is very, very important key information for everyone to be aware of. The first one is to watch for grooming behaviors. Perpetrators are always looking for ways to gain access to children, and grooming behaviors are always the first thing that pops up when children start to feel uncomfortable. And Dr. Ornelas asks them, when did you notice that something was different? When did you notice, did you start to feel uncomfortable? And it was during the grooming stage. So as parents, as caretakers, watch out for grooming behaviors. Pay attention to sexualized and concerning behaviors. As children develop, they learn more about their body, but there's sexualized behaviors and concerning behaviors that children might display if they are experiencing child sexual abuse. Talk to your children about good and bad touch, boundaries, talking to trusted adults. You would be surprised at how many children that we encounter, or how many children Dr. Ornelas might talk to, that don't know what to do and if someone were to touch them in a bad way, or they don't have the boundaries that they feel they need, or if they don't know who to go to when it comes to talking to adults. So talk with your children about good and bad touch, talk about boundaries, and talk about who those trusted individuals are that they can go to when something happens. Talk about secrets, talk about surprises, talk about the difference. Secrets are bad, surprises are known and positive. Use correct terminology for body parts. A lot of families, they don't use specific terminology for body parts. They might say pee-pee, or they might say down there, or the front, or the back. They don't use correct anatomical terms like vagina, anus, penis. So it's important that children know that these are the correct terms for them, because if we have a child that comes in and is disclosing and talking about the details of the abuse, and they don't use the correct terms, well, that can affect the rest of the process in other ways. So, but if the child knows the correct terminology and says specifically where they were touched, what happened, then it's very clear what happened. So teach your children the correct terminology for body parts. Look out for acting out, self-harm, changes in habits and interests. If a child was in sports, had good grades, was outgoing, friendly, and social, and suddenly they're withdrawing, suddenly their grades drop, suddenly they don't want to leave the home and they're isolating or withdrawn, or you notice maybe they're cutting or they're doing other self-harm behaviors. You notice that they're not as social as they used to. Maybe they're layering on their clothes. Maybe they're wearing baggy clothes. Maybe they're not who you know them to be. Those are changes in behaviors, and those need to be paid attention to. Maybe they need to talk to someone. Maybe they need to disclose something, okay? Victims will minimize abuse. So when it comes to children and disclosures, they always are looking for a safe way to disclose. So they will minimize the abuse. They might say, that person only touched me one time. Well, they come here to our office and they're talking with Dr. Ornelas, and come to find out it's happened over years. It's happened several times, because victims minimize the abuse only to see how safe it is when they disclose. If they say, the perpetrator touched me only one time, and they wait for a reaction to see if it's safe, to see if they're believed, to see if they can proceed with anything else, then that's why they minimize the abuse. Or they don't want to be seen a certain way, because children often feel like it's their fault. They let it happen. They should have said no. They should have said something. So victims, they'll minimize the abuse and come to discover that it's happened way more often than they say initially. Porn accessibility and social media. So if your children have a phone, they have access to porn and social media, which opens up a whole new world of what they might think sex is. They might look at porn and think that sex is violent. They might look at porn and want to act that out with a younger family member. or another person that they know of that's younger and more vulnerable. They might ask those children to act out those behaviors with them. They might, access social media and do bullying on social media, and trafficking happens on social media. We've had patients who have been trafficked and lured in through social media. So check your kids' phones, make sure that they're look at all their apps and see what their history is, because if they have a phone or a computer, they're accessible to porn. And we're finding out that more and more perpetrators are young and under the age of 18, because they have access to porn. Whereas before it was a magazine, it was pictures somewhere else. Well, the porn is right there and it's acted out. So the perpetrators learn this, and they perpetrate upon younger children. Perpetrators will continue to abuse children. So Dr. Annalis talked about myths and misconceptions. Well, this is one of them, that some families feel like the perpetrators, if they're trying to protect that perpetrator, they might say, oh, he changed or she changed. They no longer do that. Nope, they might have stopped with one child, but they're going to continue to perpetrate on other children. So perpetrators will continue to abuse children. Who children decide to tell and why. So a lot of our patients and family members, when they come to us, the caretakers, often the mothers, say, I wish they had known they could come to me. I wish they had told me. I wonder why they didn't come and tell me this. And the reason why kids don't tell their primary caregiver is because that caregiver is their world, their everything. That caregiver provides home. That caregiver provides food and love and all the things that comes with raising a child. Well, they don't want to ruin that. They don't want to be seen as bad because they take upon that guilt. They don't want that caretaker who's their everything to see them as it was their fault. So it's easy to tell a teacher. It's easier to tell a teacher. It's easier to tell the friend's mom or the friend, and the friend tells the mom. It's easier to tell other people besides that primary caretaker. So if a child discloses and it's not to you, then in that case, that's why. It's because they want to protect that person and they want to keep that relationship as how it is. Children will talk when feeling safe and believed, and children will not talk if feeling unsafe. So if the child comes from an environment that is supportive and loving and believing, then they might disclose something about abuse. Then down the way, if they feel believed and supported, they might say something else. And then they might say something else later. Or when they reach puberty and they learn more about their body, they might say more. So if they're feeling safe and believed, they feel more comfortable to open up to the people that they trust. However, if a family comes from, or if a child comes from a family with a unbalanced home, or there's a lot of negativity there, or there's domestic violence or substance abuse, and they don't feel safe, then they're not going to disclose to these people because they don't feel safe to begin with. So it's unlikely that they'll share a disclosure, with the people that are creating a negative environment. Do not discuss CSA around children and keep the children safe. Well, when Steph and I do an intake, we get basic information, and then we have to lead into, the part that talks about the actual abuse. Well, we don't want mom on the phone giving this information, and the child is right there, or the other children are right there. So we always ask the parent or the guardian to step outside, go into another room. Can you go sit in the car? Can you step outside the car? So, or can we call you back later to discuss this when it's just you? Because we don't want to expose the child to hearing their caretaker talk about the abuse to who knows, at this point, they don't know we're involved. So we try to keep that minimal as far as who the person is around when they're talking about abuse. And that goes for family members. If family members are nearby and they're not supportive, then don't talk about the abuse, because what if that family member is not supportive and they're going to bring up the abuse to the child and say, I heard this happened and that's not true. That person wouldn't do that, if they're defending the perpetrator. So that leads into the other points. Limit the number of times the child has to discuss CSA. When it comes to child sexual abuse, the child will be interviewed by law enforcement, by investigators, by FBI, by a forensic interviewer, and then us. So we want to keep the information. We want the child to limit the number of times they have to talk about it, not only for investigative purposes, and medical purposes, but also because it's traumatic on the child. Every time that child has to rehash everything that happened to them, that's trauma that they're reenacting. It affects their body, it affects their habits, it affects everything about them because they're having to go back there to that abuse. So we limit the number of times the child has to discuss this. Keep children safe from family members who victim blame or ask the children to discuss abuse. I talked about that. Family division, holidays, gatherings, distancing from unsupportive people and family members. Well, in the fall, in the winter, there are a lot of holidays. There's times when families gather. So when child sexual abuse is out in the open, families get divided, because if the perpetrator is a family member or someone the family knows, family members don't always rally around the child and the parents. There are parents who don't believe their children, and that's so hurtful and so damaging. But there's also family members like grandparents, uncles, aunts who don't believe the child, and that can tear families apart or divide them. So we always ask our family members, if there's a holiday coming up, 4th of July coming up, and all of you used to gather together, well, it can't happen now. What if the perpetrator's there? Number one, you have to keep the patient safe. Number two, you have to keep your unit safe too. So that means you can't socialize with the family members who are going to be unsupported. When we have cases that come in the fall and winter time, you have Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and during that time, it can be hard for family members to decide what to do. So we often tell our family members, if you need to go on a trip, if you have to find new ways to celebrate, if you have to just be at home, just you guys, then that's fine too. You guys have to protect this child and protect yourselves from more things coming out and being negative. Maintain regular routine, structure, and expectations and discipline after disclosure. So when family members, caretakers, guardians, when they're home with the children or just living their life with the children who have disclosed, they might feel a lot of guilt. They might feel a lot of shame that this has happened. And with that, there might be leniency. There might be times when they don't discipline the child like they used to, or they might allow more treats, or things that they wouldn't before. So it's important to keep routines the same, keep the structure the same, keep those expectations and discipline the same. Whatever they got in trouble with before, they still get in trouble for that after. The kids can feel when they're treated different, and that affects them too. But if they feel like they're still loved the same and all the routines are the same, then great. They feel like, okay, my family we're still moving on and I'm treated the same. So, and then the last one is healthy body development and what children will think of themselves. Well, it's when children go through abuse, they often feel like they're different than other children because of what has happened to them. Their innocence has been damaged. Their innocence is different. So especially during the time when they reach adolescence and puberty, they might think, well, am I the same as the other girls? Or if it's a male, they might say, well, am I the same as the other boys? Do I develop the same way? Am I different? Will someone, like me, or will they know, just based on looking at me? They're so vulnerable. So what is really good is that Dr. Ornelas, when she talks to the patients and she examines them, she always ensures that their body is fine. You're going to develop just like the other boys and girls. You're going to go through puberty and you're going to be just fine. No one will tell what you went through unless you tell them. So it's really good that they keep a healthy perspective on body development and how they see themselves. Next slide.
Thanks, Lynn. So I'm going to go over sexual assault anticipatory guidance. So eating, sleeping, coping skills, trigger, social interactions are all components of healing and helping your body get back to returning to regular routines. We often ask our patients when we follow up with them, you know, when they come in for in a medical evaluation or exam, or even when they come in for an emergency visit, we follow up with them after their visit, maybe following the next day or a few days after. But we also want to make sure that they're eating right, they're sleeping at night. And when our patients go through this traumatic event, it affects a lot of their, you know, daily habits. So most of our patients will not, they won't have an appetite, they'll have a hard time eating, they have nightmares, they have night terrors for, you know, when they're trying to sleep. So we'll guide them into some routines that might be helpful for them. Coping skills, we'll give them some ideas on how to deal with their, you know, their fear, their anger, their guilt, their depression. And those are a lot of what our patients go through after their sexual assault. So triggers are important for them to identify when they're out in public, when they smell something, when even if there's a gentle touch, you know, that could trigger them. So those are things for our patients to look out for. Social interactions, being in public, wanting to get back out there. Those are difficult, you know, they don't know if the perpetrator is stalking them, if the perpetrator is around where they usually go, you know, if they shop somewhere. So those are information that we like to educate our patients about. Talking to supportive people. Not all of our patients have supportive family members. We do get a lot of patients that are victim blamed. Their families don't believe them, or families talk down to them. Why were you in that environment if you know this is going to happen? Or why were you drinking? And so it's hard for them. And sometimes they do have to call our office, and we have to talk to them and be that support system for them. And that's very important. And we, you know, they sometimes have to distance themselves from family members or friends, you know, who put them in certain positions. Returning to daily routines, that is very important. It's difficult. It's going to take time. We don't expect them to bounce back right away, and they have to understand their body and the trauma that they endured. So it is difficult for them, but they do, you know, see a turnaround time. We'll call them within a couple of weeks, and they are feeling much better. Healthy and unhealthy habits. You know, a lot of our patients sometimes, I can't say a lot, but there are patients that continue with the unhealthy habits, meaning they continue to do drugs or alcohol. They want to numb the pain and everything that they had gone through. So that's difficult. And that's where our referrals come in, and they understand like what they're going through, but it's just difficult for them to really move forward. And so we really tried to help them in that way. Exercise, physical activity. We want them to be able to run, take a walk, get some fresh air, things that they like to do. If they like to play basketball, we encourage that. And safety. Safety is most important. You know, they have to return home, and some live by themselves and some live with their family. But even if they live with their family, they're not always feeling safe. So we give them ways to cope, you know, get a night light, rearrange your room to where you feel safe, Maybe they might have to sleep by a family member just to feel safe, someone that they feel safe around. And so we give them some of these options or some of these guidance for them to, take a look at and really try to understand the trauma that they have gone through. And sometimes they're not very patient with themselves, with their body, with their mental health. So that's most important. And we want them to know that it's going to take time and that we are here to support them. We are here to guide them. We are here for questions. Next slide.
So all of our cases can be similar, but none of them are ever exactly the same. With that, when we meet with our patients and the family members, we find out that we might have to make referrals based on their needs and based on what they need to heal. So the first box here, the maroon one, is scan reports. We send out scan reports to FBI, law enforcement, family services, and CYFD. When we do a scan report, it's always to ensure the safety of the child or other children in the home. Or if we find out that there are children in the home where the perpetrator currently resides. If there are other children that might be unsafe, then we definitely do scan reports. And when we do our scan reports, when we send out one to one agency, all the agencies I just mentioned get the same scan report. And then they know that the other agencies got the same exact scan report because we indicate that on the actual scan report. That way we're all on the same page, we're all aware of the circumstances, and that we can all help the children who might be in danger. We send out referrals to other TMC clinics here at the hospital. We've sent out referrals to physical therapy, the women's clinic, podiatry, the eye clinic, mental health.
Pediatrics,
Sorry.
room 5, room 7, code blue, pediatrics, room 7.
I apologize for that. It's our overcome. So we send out referrals to outpatient mental health, to the adolescent care unit. And since we see our patients and they're not in the best situation, we might find out that maybe, oh, they haven't been to dental in a while. Oh, they need to go to the women's clinic. They have an issue. A child might have a speech impairment, or a child is autistic and they need special services. So we always send out referrals to other clinics who will help them too and make everything more balanced in their lives. And also to other hospitals like Shinley, GIMC, to Crown Point. We send out referrals to them for services if the patients are from there. They're not always from the Fort Defiance agency. So specialty clinics, we have patients who are dealing with encopresis, with hearing problems. They might not have the most supportive environment, so they need to have these specialty clinics help them out. We also provide referrals to shelters and transitional housing. Shelters, there's plenty in our area, but if the patient lives in Phoenix and was home and got seen here and has to go back, but there's no place for them to go, we help with shelters. Althea James from Strengthening Families.
Pharmacy, pediatric clinic, pharmacy, stat, pediatric clinic, pharmacy, stat, pediatric clinic.
I apologize for that. So we send out referrals to shelters, and Althea is very helpful about meeting us to get our patients to shelters. And we have a success story with housing assistance because we also help our patients obtain housing from shelters and transitional housing. Steph had a patient who she was not in a safe environment, and her sister lived in Phoenix and didn't have a place of her own. So when they lived with family members in Phoenix, the family member was living in a small apartment and had other family members there that were unsupportive, and they would victim blame. So we needed to get the patient and her sister out. So Steph was able to work with housing assistance, and the the two girls were able to go to shelter and then go to transitional housing and eventually their own apartment. And now they have their own apartment and they're doing well. And the sister is raising her younger sister. So things like that, we help out with that. We send out referrals to schools, to counselors. We help with GED programs. Some of our patients are maybe after their abuse, there's a lot going on and they don't want to go back to school. They just want to get their GED. So we help with that. I had a patient who was in high school, graduated, and she didn't know the first thing to do about applying for college because she didn't come from a supportive environment. So I helped her get set up for college. And I know Steph and I, we always look for resources and ways to help get our young people into college. We work with other advocates from the U.S. Attorney's Office and the victim specialists from FBI. We always work together. We're on the phone. We discuss cases, of course, with permission of the patient and their families. And we work together with those other advocates. We send out referrals for treatment, whether that's long-term, whether that's RTC, residential care, the clinical setting here and other hospitals, and also with traditional healing. And then, of course, with the adolescent care unit here. So these are some of the referrals that we send out. Next slide, please. So this is just a view of some of the pamphlets, booklets, and resources that we give out to our patients. On the top left, you see some booklets, a guide for friends and family members of sexual violence survivors. This booklet is helpful for anyone that our sexual assault patients might encounter or they might be living with, because sometimes family members don't know how to help a victim or survivor of sexual assault. That booklet is for them. It helps them understand. It shows do's and don'ts of what to do with the person who has experienced the sexual violence. The middle booklet is from our very own department. We have all these resources and we thought that we wanted to come up with a booklet that was straight for our people from the perspective of being Diné. So this booklet was created and it's on healing, and it goes over all the areas of healing, all the things you need to do. It provides information on how we can help and how people can help themselves. And then the next little booklet is Overcoming Painful Past Experiences. This helps them to determine, they might say, well, I'm having trouble sleeping and I can't eat right. My body, my whole life is thrown off. This information tells them that's to be expected and that's fine. You might go through this, you might go through that. So when they go through it, they're like, oh, okay, that's to be expected, so that it won't stay like that, depending on the situation. And then the next picture here is some information on sexual violence, again, from our department. The bottom left is a pamphlet for strengthening families, and we work really well with them. They're so supportive. That's where Althea James helps us out. And then the middle bottom area is pamphlets from our department. And then this middle pamphlet is for it. We give this to our patients because it's like a quick reference. When they're going through the investigative process, when they're going through other processes, they need a quick reference to have what they need right then and there, instead of following around looking like, oh yeah, I had the case number, where is it? They might say, oh, here it is, and pull out that pamphlet, because we want to make sure that they have all their information accessible and easy to find. We also give out notebooks. We also give out sage. We give out bags and pens to our patients so that they have everything together to stay organized, because it's a tough process to go through on top of the trauma. The next one is traditional cultural services. We work hand in hand with Erin Sam, like Steph said, and we want them to know what that department entails. And then on the bottom right, these are all booklets for child sexual abuse and how families can help understand what their children are going through and how to respond to anything related. Next slide, please.
So I wanted to talk to you about some of the offices, programs, agencies that we connect with. Navajo Nation Courts and Navajo Nation Prosecutor's Office. We help our patients with some of their, if they have court dates, or if they are asking about where their case is, we will help them. We will call them. And sometimes we get forms for them through the Navajo Nation courts. And that could be throughout Navajo Nation. We could, we call Delcon. Lynn and I have even went to a training with Delcon courts, and they explained and went through their process, their court process, and their how to file papers. So that was very helpful for us. And so we kind of, know what to expect and give our patients. We don't know everything, but, and that's why we have Althea James. So Althea is very instrumental with our department. She is our front runner. She, Lynn and I, we are medical advocates. So Althea is very helpful, very flexible. We can call her if our patient decides, hey, I need a protection order. How do I go about this? And we usually can give them the papers, but Althea is able to meet them, or at times she'll be able to come to our office to meet with our families and explain the process for a protection order, or she can get an emergency protection order right away. So depending on the situation and the severity. Victims, crime, reparation, compensation, CVRC, I'll talk more about that in our next slides. We deal with New Mexico and Arizona. The Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. We have taken trainings from them. They are very helpful. They are very resourceful. Lynn and I have been able to call them and get resources for some of our patients. And the patient that Lynn was talking about, my patient that we had helped with housing, I had called them and they had got me in touch, and I had to go through some of these channels, but we really wanted to get this patient and her sister housing, something that they could get themselves into a healthy environment. So, I called the Arizona Coalition. They gave me resources. I called Native Health. Native Health in return got me situated with Yudera Medrano, I think. And she was so helpful. She was able to actually help with funding for housing, for rent, clothing, food. So I am just so thankful that we were able to connect with her, because she really, really helped our patient out and her sister. And they have a beautiful, cute little apartment. And Lynn and I went down to deliver some Christmas goodies for them. And they were really excited to show us where they were at now currently, and their position, their home, and how they were doing. So that was really fun to see, and we were excited for them. Collaborations. We collaborate with the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women. That, and our contact person is Jolene Holgate, and she used to be the right hand or Delegate Crotty's assistant. So she's very helpful also with the New Mexico side for our patients. Nas Casa, this is a group that we collaborate with. It's the Navajo, Apache, Ute, Hopi, Zuni Committee Against Sexual Assault. And we meet monthly, and these tribes come together, and we feed off each other with resources, collaborations. They talk about some of the things that they're having trouble with, and we're able to kind of brainstorm together. And it's all positive and uplifting, and we are happy to be a part of that group. Dene Pride, MMDR, the Murdered and Missing Dene Relatives, the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. We are very supportive with those efforts. We try to help them if they need help, or we try to show awareness to that cause. And so May 5th is coming up for the MMIW, and we want to support them and support all the families that are missing their Indigenous sisters, daughters, nieces, their family members. And so we want to wear red, just giving you a heads up that that's coming up. The Navajo Nation Sexual Assault Subcommittee, and that is run with the Navajo Nation Council. Delegate Crotty is a forefront woman that is very instrumental in getting this out there to the public and acknowledging that these are some of the things that currently that we need to pay attention to and address. So we are thankful for her work also. Next slide, Dallas. So I had talked about the CVRC, and I just wanted to let you know that every state is different depending on their funding. And so we mainly deal with Arizona CVRC and New Mexico CVRC, depending on where the crime, the incident happened, and where the patient is living. So with Arizona CVRC, they're still working with the paper application, and we have pamphlets, we have information for them. The New Mexico CVRC is actually, they have an application and an online application. So that's really helpful because a lot of people, nowadays we do everything online. So you can just put in the information online, send it, and probably get a quicker response. But I just wanted to go over a few things. All applicants that apply for this do go under review, and it's not guaranteed payment. So, and CVRC is state funded. They are crime-related program that helps with out-of-pocket expenses for medical treatment, mental health, counseling, funerals, and wage loss. So there's a variety. They'll give you a list of what they're able to cover and how much they're able to cover. Like I said, every state is different. They have different expenses, funding expenses that they tap. So you can look up the website, or if you have information if you need more information, you can call us, and we have the application, and we have the brochures also. So that is something. When our patients come in, we give them this application at times, or most of the time they fill it out here, and we're able to mail it for them, give them copies, make sure that they have that. It's helpful to have their police record. And
Code
this,
blue,
like I said,
clear, pediatric clinic, code blue, clear, pediatric clinic, code blue, clear, pediatric clinic.
sorry about that. Like I said, if you have any questions about that, I also want to address on the right side of your screen, that is the traditional healing form. And say, a lot of us on the reservation, we tend to want to seek traditional services. We go to our medicine man or our traditional practitioner. Whatever you're able to pay the practitioner, or if you give a gift and you state how much the gift is valued, you can get a reimbursement for that, save your receipts. And on this form, you can give the paperwork to the medicine man or the traditional healer. They can fill it out, and you can send it in and get a reimbursement for what you had paid for services. So that, I think, is wonderful, because as Navajos or other Native Americans, we seek the traditional part, the spiritual part of that. And we want, and it's good that they're able to reimburse that and acknowledge that, that we have our own practices. So. Next slide.
Steph. Karen just noted in the chat that Arizona has an online process now.
Oh, good.
Just recently, yes.
Yeah, good. Well, we will look that up, because, we call them, and We are under Apache County, so we have to call St. John's, and that's good to know. I'm happy that there is an online portal for that. Collaborative efforts. Is that you, Lynn?
That's you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Collaborative efforts. On the left, you'll see Steph, me, Lynn, and Jolene Holgate. She is part of the coalition in New Mexico. And she works with the MMDR, and we work with her. And right now she is conducting trainings, but she's wonderful. She knows a lot, and she is very helpful. On the right-hand side, this is the Food Security Task Force at the Fac Medical Center. And like our last presentation, we talked about some of the food deliveries that we had made for our patients. And this is part of the task force that we're able to deliver within the hospital, also to other patients as well. Next slide, Dallas.
So here is a picture of our brand new banner for the Family Advocacy Center. And in the picture, you see Steph, you see the First Lady of the Navajo Nation, you see President Nez, and our very own Miss Navajo, Niagara Rockbridge, and then myself. So we participated shortly in the walk this week, and we were able to debut our banner for a little bit. At the bottom, you see the phrase that we put on a lot of our materials. It says, "Ne ayo'otne, ne halongo, ne awet yusinatsa." That means listen to your children with love. We put that out there because we want our Dene relatives to know that they need to listen to their children and provide that love and support. And then Steph here in the picture, you see her wearing that white t-shirt, and it has our little FAC symbol on there. On the back, there's another wording that says, "Otlant behahotfit," and that means start by believing. So we have those on our t-shirts as well, and in some of our materials. Next slide. And here's a few more photos of things that we participated in. The photo on the left is with Gwen Atakai and Haley Barba. They're victim assistance specialists, and they do what we do, but for the U.S. Attorney's Office. And they help their clients go through the legal process if cases ever do reach the U.S. Attorney's Office. So that's Steph and I at the fair in 2019. And we had a booth that we shared with them, and we sat out there and we gave out materials and educated people, and it was a good day. The middle picture is, you see Dr. Analis there in the mask in the center of the picture there, and a film crew, and then Dallas there, who is the director of marketing. Renee did a documentary called Little Victims Everywhere, and the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism came out and interviewed Dr. Analis. And if you want to go to our website, the TMC FAC website, this video is there. A link to watch this video is there. It's great. And then the photo on the right is Steph and I with the 2018-19 Miss Navajo, Autumn Montoya. And then back then, Kayla Martinez and Shandine Parrish were running for Miss Navajo. So we participated and supported them in that event. Next slide. So we always share healing material with our patients. We always want to provide them with things that will help them in their healing. We have sage, we have sweetgrass, we have cedar, and then we have healing passages here that they can read and take with them if they need to. The first little passage is called Little Sister, and you can read that if you want, or take a picture of the screen. The bottom one is about healing too. And then on the right is a little excerpt from the healing booklet from our department. This one, it's on the back. And it just talks about healing and feel good passages that, they can relate to and help them with their journey to healing. So if you want, you can take a picture of that. Next slide, please. So we have a whole lot of resources. These are just some of the resources that we provide and that we work through to tailor the care for our patients and the families. So if you want, you can get your camera out, you can take a picture of this. On this page, we talk about videos that are on YouTube regarding consent, and there's 3 videos. There's one for adults, there's one for kids, and then there's one that has some explicit language in, but they all provide information on tea and consent. And Dr. Annalis uses these videos when she's talking to the adolescents at the adolescent care unit. She provides education to them regarding this topic. And these are great videos to relate to. The next few resources are books. Some parts are not for sharing. It's a kid's book for little ones, and it talks about body parts and boundaries. And then the next one, AJ's story about not okay touches, that is about a family member who was touching on another family member, how it's not okay, and their story about it. And then we have our own FAC healing booklet. And then there's an excellent book that we encourage people to read. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And this is about healing from trauma and that journey, and how the body remembers the trauma, and how to cope with the changes that you have to make in order to heal. And then the rest are numbers for coalitions that we work with and shelters. We also work with different tribes, like Steph was mentioning. So there's the New Beginning program in Zuni, and then there's the Hopi Tewa Women's Coalition to End Abuse. Next slide, please.
So here are more links and resources. The National Sexual Hotline, the Human Trafficking Hotline. Strong Hearts is like one of the main helplines that we share and we give out a lot on our presentations. The Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline. So most of these are hotlines that may be helpful for you or some of your patients or family members that you're helping. The ACEs toolkit that talks about mainly about the disparities in most families' lives. You can even take a quiz to see where you stand and some of the reasons why you are the way you are, you know, the trauma, the past trauma that you have gone through that affects your life as an adult. So that's something to really look at and learn what it does and what it doesn't mean. It's very helpful. It's a good resource. We did a presentation on that also. The Trevor Project, resources for the LGBTQ plus teens and young adults, tips for talking to your kids about sexual abuse, understanding and coping with sexual behavior problems in children. Those are all, we put the website under if you want to look more into that. The San Juan Center for Independence, and the Hojoni Foundation. Those are 2 programs that we had connected with for some of our patients that have disabilities. So the San Juan Center for Independence, they have a Gallup office, and they are very resourceful for disabled adults. They are able to help with housing, how to fill out applications, job, if they need medical, like glasses and things like that, they're able to help. And so their Gallup office is within the Rio West Mall, right by the entrance by Hobby Lobby. And so we put that on there. The Hojoni Foundation, that is a program in Flagstaff. They have different locations, but we were dealing with the ones in Flagstaff, and that helps disabled adults transition to independent living. So they can stay there. They have residential housing there for them, and then they can allow them to get help them to get a job, and they work part-time, and it just prepares them for independence moving forward as they get older. So that was really nice and helpful to see. And we were able to give that information to some of our patients. Next slide, Dallas.
So this list of resources and links are more for the local area. SAS, which is Sexual Assault Services for New Mexico, they have an office in Farmington and in Gallup. The Northern Arizona Center Against Sexual Assault, that's in Flagstaff, called NACASA. And then we have of course, CYFD for New Mexico, Wonderot Family Services, our own mental health department outpatient, and then the inpatient, which is the adolescent care unit, and the Navajo Treatment Center for Children and Families, which we send referrals to also. Navajo Nation Strengthening Families, which falls under the Division of Family Services. Of course, Chinle Hospital, GIMC, and then the National Indian Country Clearinghouse on Sexual Abuse, and then a tribal resource tool for survivors of crime and abuse. You can take a picture of these. Next slide. So this concludes our presentation on healing and resources. Like the slide says, friends, allies, colleagues, survivors, supporters of the fight against sexual assault and child sexual abuse. Your time, interest, and involvement in our Sexual Assault Awareness Month presentations this month is truly appreciated. And we just wanted to leave you with a quote that Dr. Arnell shared with us. She is so supportive in our self-care and how we have a balanced caseload and what we can handle and what can be too much, because this job is very challenging, but you know, we rise to the occasion and we love our jobs and we love our people. We love the families and the children and survivors that we service. So I'll just read this quote, and it says, "The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water and not get wet." And that just means, you know, we're in this every day. This is what we do for a living, is help our people. And we have to not take things home. We have to leave them here. And before we come to work, we have to pray about what we do, because we need to be in the right frame of mind. We need to be able to help, you know, people who come in, and especially on an emergency basis when we're called in the middle of the night and we have to leave our home and our loved ones to come here and help, you know, get them through the process. So we have to be strong, and a lot of that comes with prayer. A lot of that comes with our loved ones who support us, and also from Dr. Arnallis, who she just really believes in us. So sorry to get emotional, but yeah, she's a trailblazer, and we are very lucky to have her. So yeah, thank you everyone for participating, and Dallas for facilitating us and running the slides, and to my co-presenter, Steph.
Thank you. Yes, thank you all.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you, ladies, for this great presentation. This will conclude our live webinar, and we'll have these posted on our YouTube page as well on the Family Advocacy Center website. You can go to www.fdihp.org and /FAC and find their website and all the resources that they mentioned here today. And even that list, if you weren't able to get a screenshot of the list of resources sort of there at the end, we'll try to get that up on the website as well. So it will kind of be there forever. And if you miss any of the other webinars, if you're on Facebook, just scroll down and access those, but we'll also have these up on our YouTube page. So with that, thank you. I don't see any questions on Facebook or on the Zoom. Okay. So with that, we'll say we'll end this web series. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Dallas.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Dallas.
Happy Friday.